Hello, this is Jorge Herrera, and this video is going to start the new project of reading the book Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. Okay, so we're going to start with the introduction. Well, actually, you see the book in the background? I just read the book in Spanish in several videos. So if you do speak Spanish, or Spanish is your main language and you have a little difficulty with English, then you can find that those videos in my YouTube channel, IBQser. If you follow me, you can also find it in Facebook under my page, the Jorge E. Herrera, IBC Advocate. So you can find it there too, and you can find it in LinkedIn. So you can find it if you look for it. So anyway, we're starting the project with the book Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, author Nelson Nash. So in the introduction, action is preceded by thinking. Thinking is to deliberate beforehand over future action and to reflect afterwards upon the past action. Thinking and action are inseparable. That was a quote by Ludwig von Mises. Thoughts lead on to purposes, purposes go forth in action, action forms habits, habits decide character, and character fixes your identity or your oh, I apologize. And character fixes our destiny. That was by Tryon Edwards. So Nelson says, I finished college in 1952 at the University of Georgia with a bachelor's in science degree in forestry. While there, I took the 4 years of Air Force ROTC, and this financial help made it possible for me to graduate. A 2 year obligation of active duty was required, and this was right in the middle of the Korean conflict. Our government called it a police action instead of a war, because only Congress can declare war on another country. Somehow or another, government leaders try to change the meaning of words and still accomplish their objectives. But in this case, it still was a war. Nevertheless, 54,246 American men and women lost their lives in the event. Casualties are not included in this figure, but to me, the worst result of that war was the thought process that is produced in the minds of American citizens. There is no way that this activity could be classified as defending our freedoms. How you think is everything. It determines your behavior. Upon completion of this obligation, I went to work as a forester in Eastern North Carolina. I knew very little about socialism and its effect on the minds of people, but I came face to face with the mental paralysis that this monster causes. Consider this situation. Johnston County, North Carolina, is tobacco country. It was a much bigger factor in the economy at that time than now. 20 acres was a typical tobacco farm, so here I am working in that kind of situation. I call on, we will call him Mr. Smith, and he owned 5,000 acres of land. 4,000 acres were in timberland, and 1,000 acres were farmland. He had accumulated all this property to qualify for the 100 acres of tobacco allotment that went with the farmland. You see, tobacco production was highly regulated by the Department of Agriculture, bureaucracy at its best. Mr. Smith, I am a private forester. I do not work for the government in any capacity. Smokey Bear and I don't see things exactly the same. I work for people like you by contract. With your agreement, I will inventory your timberland for a fee. I will bring you a report on my findings. I will divide your timberland up into three categories: good, bad, and indifferent. I will propose that you sell the bad and indifferent timber and use the proceeds to rejuvenate the forest land with good trees. Make this procedure an ongoing practice and you will have a constant source of income in the future. His response, I can't do that. My reply, would you mind tell me why not? I know the government pays landowners to grow trees. Whatever they will pay for, I will agree to do. Now, look, by the time you consider the value of what little the government would allocate, plus the time and effort of the landowner abiding by the bureaucratic procedures, etc., any landowner has spent more than the value received. Not to mention the time value of all the loss of production on the land containing bad and marginal timber. I ran into that kind of thinking in the majority of cases of calling on timberland owners that had substantial acreage. So I wonder, why would anyone behave like that? Why don't people do what common sense indicates would be best to do? After experiencing this phenomenon many times, here I am at a social gathering at the home of a radiologist, and I am running my mouth about what I had witnessed. The, radiolo- the, radiol- blah, the radiologist says, sound like you need to read this book. He went back to his library and got a copy of Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Try reading this. About 10 days later, I returned the book and said, I have two questions. Where have you folks been hiding this stuff, and why did you hide it from me? He replied, if you liked what you read, get on the mailing list for this journal called The Freeman, published by the Foundation for Economic Education. At this point, I want to mention to you that if you get in the websites of these two groups, you learn a lot of the right economics, the Foundation for Economic Education, and the Mises Institute. So continue. All you have to do is ask for it. They are supported entirely by donations, but they will never ask you for money. It is all dependent on your evaluation of what you are reading. If you have not sent them a contribution within 1 year, they will simply take your name off the mailing list. Well, needless to say, I got on the list immediately, and the more I read, the better I got. That began my passionate study of Austrian economics. I was particularly attracted to the writings of Leonard E. Reed and the historian Dr. Clarence B. Carson. In time to come, Leonard became my mentor and friend. I am a charter member of the Leonard E. Reed Society. There are only 100 of us. Later on, I got to know Dr. Clarence Carson very well. My wife and I worked with him on his board of directors for over 20 years. One day, I was reading the Freeman and I read an excellent article by Dr. Paul Cleveland, an economics professor at Birmingham Southern College, located right here in my city. Within hours, I was talking with him, and within days, we were having lunch together. Dr. Paul Cleveland is a great economist, and he has given great lectures, of which I was able to be present at some of those that he presented at the think tank with the Nelson Nash Institute. By the Mhm. Hold on, where I okay. Soon afterward, I introduced him to Dr. Carson, and later he became involved as a member of Carson's board of directors. During their friendship, Clarence taught Paul how to write books and self-publish them. Paul has written several since, and they are listed in the reading list in the back of this book. By the grace, by the grace of God, I was there in Irvington on Hudson, New York, when Leonard E. Reed died and when Dr. Clarence B. Carson died. Paul Cleveland and I were asked to conduct the funeral. As the psalmist David says in Psalm 23:5, my cup runneth over. And so, after many years of study of Austrian economics, I discovered the answer to my question about the behavior of Mr. Smith, the timberland owner in eastern North Carolina, and all the others with similar behavior. Why didn't these timberland owners just forget about the government programs and do what common sense tells them to do? They would have been much better off. It is simply the fact that whenever there is a government program of any kind, normally intelligent people will abandon their productive activity and go stand in line for their share of the measly handout and watch each other starve to death. It all depends on how one thinks. Socialism does this sort of thing to the minds of men. It is all a form of covetousness. Thou shalt not covet is the last of the Ten Commandments. In order to become a free man, one cannot do that. It will dominate his thinking, and that will determine his actions. In early 1957, I was attending the regular meeting of the Lions Club in Smithfield, North Carolina. The program chairman played the long play recording of Earl Nightingale's message, The Strangest Secret. What an impact it had on my life. I could not wait to get my personal copy of that record. The strangest secret, you become what you think about all day long. Earl Nightingale. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. That's Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinketh, James Allen. I listened to that message so many times, that I memorized it. It is true. You do become what you think about. While I was in the second through fourth grade, growing up in Athens, Georgia, we lived across the road from the airport. I'm just a kid watching those airplanes regularly and thinking about what it would be like to be a pilot. I knew that one day I would become a pilot, though I had no early idea of how I would become to pass, or of how it would become to pass. Just 6 years later, I made my first solo flight at that airport. Being involved with airplanes is expensive stuff, and my family was not noted for having lots of money. But if you have the desire, somehow or another it will take place. Be careful of what you think about, it will going to happen. Earl Nightingale says, the mind is like a field. The field doesn't care what you plant there, it will grow. Plant good thoughts and you will become good. Plant bad thoughts and you will become bad. Plan nothing and you will become nothing. 1957 was a good year in my life. That was the year that I started my own business. In addition to the items mentioned above, I became involved with the local Chamber of Commerce. Later that year, the Chamber sponsored the Dale Carnegie course, and I enrolled. I remember vividly in one of the books we studied how the notorious gangster Al Capone thought that his activity was a benefit to mankind. That was quite a revelation to me. Didn't he know better? No, that was the way he thought, and thoughts determine our behavior. All the events listed in this introduction led me to many years of study of human behavior and why people behave the way they do. A vital item in their behavior revolves around how they look at money and wealth. Conventional wisdom has led the world into financial slavery. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a way out of this bondage. My prayer is that you will find this book helpful in finding your own way to financial freedom. Any necessary change in your life will involve the way you think and your willingness to change the way you go about it. Next, reading in English will start building your warehouse of wealth, a grassroots method of avoiding fractional reserve banking. Think about it. So that would be chapter one. Possibly on Monday, I mean on Friday, I will read this introduction in Spanish. If it's not Friday, maybe it will be Saturday. Thank you for taking a look at this video. And if you have any questions, you can put them under the videos that you will see in YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, uh, Twitter, or X, and the Daily Motion. Also, you can contact me at jorgeeherrera.com, and there we can exchange experiences, and we can talk about this book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, or Becoming Your Own Banker. And if you have read a book, you probably know that building your platform where you own and control, where you can deposit most of your money, is one of the best economic decisions that you can make in life. So, thank you for listening, and I will be again on a video on Friday or Saturday in Spanish, and then I will continue on chapter one on Monday in English. I'll talk to you next time. So